right, well, welcome and good evening, everyone, to another episode of Garden Hour here on our summer Tuesday evenings. It's good to see everyone, and welcome to Rhoda and Sydney as our panelists today. It's kind of an exciting, momentous occasion because it's Rhoda's last evening with us for Garden Hour, so we are going to miss her, but she has been a wealth of information for all of us and for all of South Dakota over these years. So we're looking forward to what you have to share with us this evening. And then also Sydney. So maybe would each of you tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about?
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of going back in time, which is why I am wearing my garden line shirt that some of the people watching may recognize. But I'm going to talk about one of the passions of mine, which is the soil-plant interface and how plant roots communicate with soil microbes and how we can take advantage of that for our gardens.
That's going to be awesome.
And I'll be talking about plants that are growing at McCrory Gardens and some of the plantings we did in the vegetable garden. So, a little timely. And I will
definitely. Cool. So, and also, my name is Buterbaugh, and I'm the SDSU Extension Horticulture Field Specialist. And if there's time when Sydney and Rhoda are done, then I will talk a little bit about some native plants out in the western part of the state. And then as we go through these presentations, feel free to put any questions into the chat or the Q&A section, preferably the Q&A. The Q&A box would be better. And then we will go through those at the end. All right. Take it away, Sydney.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. If you would want to put where you're coming from or watching this video on in the chat, it's always fun to see where everyone's watching from. I work at McCrory Gardens. I'm the education coordinator and SDSU Extension Horticulture Assistant. So tonight I'll be kind of showing you some of the plants that are growing at McCrory Gardens and some of our vegetable gardens, plants we have in there. See if it goes. All right, so this is our McCrory Gardens crew. It's a combination of our outside crew and inside crew. So the ones that help make the gardens look super pretty, and then the ones that welcome all of the guests. So we all kind of work together. We got to meet one morning and take a big group picture and get to know each other a little bit. But this summer has been a little different with the weather. Starting this late spring, it has been a little bit colder. There's been some rainy days, so we haven't been able to get into the gardens as often as we'd like. So we are a little bit behind on the planting. This was just today. We are starting, or not starting, we have been planting a lot of the annual beds. And the crew has been doing awesome. So getting those plants in as best as and fast as we can. So yeah, this is our crew. One plant that is blooming in full bloom right now, the roses. This morning we had the kids come to the gardens and we had to let the wiggles out because they're so crazy. So we went on a little walk and smelled each of the roses and they loved each one of them. Peonies, if any of you have peonies at your home or maybe you've seen them on your drive, they are blooming right now. Some of them are starting to go a little bit, but some are just starting to open. So I personally love peonies, so I love this time of the season. And calendula, so this one is one of the annuals that we planted. And if you didn't know, it is the National Garden Bureau's year of the calendula. So little fun fact, calendula comes from the Latin calendulae, meaning little calendar, referring to the fact that the flowers open at sunrise and close at sunset. So we have a bunch of these flowers planted in like the pots and into the grounds as well to kind of help celebrate that year of the plant. If any of you have wisteria, this one is blooming right now. When we went to the UK in about a month ago, some of the master gardeners, we just saw them starting to fade. They flowered and then we were towards the end of it. So now we are starting to get the blooming of the wisteria. And then this is one that people love to see. So it is a type of clematis instead of the vine. This is more of a bush-like, and it's a blue ribbons variety. So it's just a really cool plant. And then you see once it's done flowering, it'll send out this whirly seed head that always reminds me, if you've seen Lorax, it kind of looks like those truffula trees. So it's kind of a cool one. People always ask what it is each year. And then with our youth programming, we have kids from the Great After School Place. And we have the kindergartners and 4th and 5th graders, and they visit once a week. And we had them visit today. We have been doing a lot of the Junior Master Gardener curriculum. So kind of following a lot of those learning materials and doing those activities with the kids have been super fun. So if any of you ever need any ideas on youth programming, just reach out to me and I can help give you some ideas. But the summer has been going awesome so far. So with that, a lot of times with the kids, I kind of linked in, we like to show them a lot of our different produce that we have. And in the back here, the raspberries are starting to be ready in a few weeks. And they love eating the raspberries. So I kind of brought that into this. But so in our vegetable garden, we have about 8 raised beds that look like these square ones here. And we always try to do different designs and kind of mix different plants in with them. So the first one we have is this different varieties of basil. I think there's like a Thai basil, lemon basil, cardinal basil. So you can kind of smell all of them. And then this bed, we have cotton and peanuts. So cotton in the middle. By the end of the summer into the fall, it will start producing the cotton. So it kind of goes a little bit longer into the season. And then we actually grow peanuts here as well. Next, we have in this bed, we kind of packed in a lot. We have some marigolds for pollination. And then in the middle, we also have okra. And then on the sides, we have some parsley and then cilantro and then Swiss chard on corners. If you don't know what Swiss chard is, a lot of times you can use that for stir fries and cooking. And then right here, we have some strawberries. So we actually have a Brookings area master gardener who he wrote a book about apple trees, and he was very passionate about getting apple trees into all of the schools for kids to be able to take home and plant an apple tree at their house. But he realized that not all kids had access to a yard, and sometimes you need 2 apple trees for them to be able to pollinate. So what he did was he came up with this idea to do strawberries now. And we have one of the replications here at McCrory in a raised bed. And then a few other master gardeners are kind of duplicating the design and going to be, or test experiment, they're going to be seeing which variety of strawberries grows the best. It was a little later in the season. It was cold and rainy, so we weren't able to get the strawberries out right away. But there is one variety that is much better than the rest and made it further. So it's this one, and those 2 are the same. So just a fun little experiment we're doing, and I'm happy to have the master gardeners a part of it. Next we have this raised bed, which is some bush beans. We planted those a few weeks ago and they're already looking great. And then on this vining trellis here will be some birdhouse gourds. And then here we have a mix of some strawberry spinach and then marjoram, which is a sweeter herb. and then strawberry spinach. If you've never grown this before, I would recommend it because it tastes so yummy, and they're done usually kind of early summer, so they'll start fruiting soon. And then once they're done, you can dig those out and plant some like radish or beets in there, something that grows fast. So you can kind of make use of your space, but also have a mix of tasty things. And then in the back here, you can see we have some rows. We planted some carrots back there, some different varieties, and then I didn't get it fully in the picture, but we have some zucchini back there. And then a ton of different tomatoes back in here. We have some different heirloom ones and cherry tomatoes. Further as the season goes, once they start fruiting out, I will kind of update you guys on what different kinds we have. This one, we also have another tomato, some more marjoram, oregano, and some more marigold. So we kind of fit a lot in there. And then I see a little raspberry kind of sneaking up right there. Cucamelon, if none of you have heard of cucamelon before, what it is a tiny, it looks like about the size of a grape, but it looks like a mini watermelon. And then it'll grow up on this vine, and they're very good just as a snack. You can pop them in your mouth, or you can put them in salads. Super fun plant. And then we have this chamomile back here, and that spreaded like crazy. So if you love tea, it works out good. But if you don't like to keep picking it, probably wouldn't recommend planting this in an open area where it can spread. Also, same with dill, that likes to spread as well. So we have some dill in here, cilantro, chives, marigold, and then on this trellis, we have a luffa gourd, which is a type of gourd, and then you get the sponge made out of it. Then back here, closest to the building where it can get some shade, are some cool season crops like kohlrabi, kale, and cabbage, some different varieties in there. And we did have a problem with a bunny in there. One weekend we came back and it was some of the cabbage was chewed up quite a bit, and then we thankfully still had our transplants in the shop yard, so we replanted, and then we came back the next day and they were still bitten. So I think we're just going to leave those end ones, and we found the baby bunny inside of the fence area, so we kind of like shooed it out, and hopefully it doesn't come back in. So we did reinforce the fencing too, so hopefully that helps as well. And then in the front we have some peppers, and they are some sweet and hot varieties, so mix of some different peppers. And then for the Three Sisters Garden, so traditionally the Three Sisters Garden is an indigenous way of growing corn, bean, and squash. So the corn traditionally is planted first, and that will have the strong roots and then the height to grow up. And then you'll plant beans next, and the beans will provide nitrogen for the soil, and that will climb up the corn. And then last you have squash, and then the squash will provide a ground cover, hopefully keeping out the weeds and then holding in the moisture into the soil. And they're all three supposed to work together to grow as best as they can. But the last few years, we have had some problems with the raccoons in the gardens and tearing down all of the corn. So this year we are trying a new sister, which is right here. And so this doesn't look like corn. It is actually sunflowers. So we're going to be trying those sunflowers instead this year and see how they do. And then the day we planted them, I just kind of took some pictures of some of the seeds we planted for beans and squash. We have a good variety. We do get them at Baker Creek. There are tons of different places you could get them. And some of them the beans I'm looking forward to the most are the Christmas pole lima bean and the succotash bean, and then a bunch of different fun looking squashes as well. And then for resources, if any of you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Garden Hotline. We'd love to help you answer your questions. Here's a QR code if you'd like, and we'd be happy to help you. Okay, here's another one. We have the tree pest alert. If Dr. Ball's really good at updating this every week, and a lot of times you might have some tree problems, and you might often see similar problems that he has put it on the tree pest alert. So this is also an awesome resource. And then save the date. We are having a garden party and garden expo at McCrory Gardens. We are celebrating our 60th birthday. So it'll be a fun time with some jazz music and SDSU ice cream. And the next day for Garden Expo, we will have the SDSU Native Plant Initiative and some tours and a bunch of fun activities. So save the date if you're interested. Otherwise, here's the other events going on throughout the year, the whole rest of the year. And then I just wanted to thank Rhoda so much, and I hope you have a happy retirement. And yeah, thank you for all that you've done for SDSU Extension, and I am thankful to have learned so much from you. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sid. We did have one pressing question, which was, what strawberry is best?
Ooh, okay. I cannot remember exactly which variety it was, but once you guys are presenting, I will look it up and I'll put it in the chat.
That sounds good. And then another question, I know we had a question about maples that somebody was going to try to put a picture in, and that didn't work. So I think we've had several questions about issues with maples this spring and early summer. Do you have anything that you can add about that?
Yes, so I have been getting lots and lots of questions about maple trees, specifically in Sioux Falls, that have been losing their leaves. So Dr. Ball had mentioned how, because of this spring has been so weird, of how they've leafed out, and it's been cool and then warm and then cool. It's because just because they leafed out at that certain time, they're starting to lose them. They should recuperate, but yes, it has been definitely a problem. Yeah, so.
All right, well, thank you. And I know Dr. Ball is definitely the person to turn to if you have tree questions. So I know we had another tree question with a picture, and I think reaching out to Dr. Ball is probably he's a really great resource, and he usually gets back fairly quickly depending on his travel schedule. And he doesn't mind inquiries directly onto his cell phone, which I think is up on our resources page. So all right. Well, thank you, Sydney. Rhoda, tell us a little bit about soil and plants.
All right. I'll have to say that I have a silver maple in my backyard, and I looked up at my gutter the other day and realized there was a baby silver maple growing out of it. So we had a heavy seed year this year. All right, so
sorry, yes.
tonight I thought about what message do I want to leave our gardeners, has what I'd like them to take away. And I thought about, let's look at the soil again, that neglected part that we kind of don't know what to do with a lot of times. We sort of know some of what we're told to put on organic matter and so forth. And then I'd like to dig into that, no pun intended, a little bit tonight. And I love this quotation by Amy Stewart. Kind of, we're always looking at the landscape, but we all know one of the things that drove the prairie was the soil underneath. And so I'm going to look at that a little bit and see what lessons we might learn for our own gardening. So a little closer look at the roots and soil organisms. So a little bit of a diagram just to kind of put things into perspective. We've got a little bit of a root here, not a very big one, with root hairs that are the absorbing organs of the plant. And then you see there's a lot of bacterial colonies, a lot of fungi that are just hanging around the outside of that root, because this root is always losing sugars and other substances that will feed those bacteria. And that's not by accident. There's a reason the plant actually wants to feed all these other microorganisms that we see. The browns are like sand or soil particles. You see a little mite there and some other little creatures. So the one thing I want you to think about is that soil is alive. Sometimes it's not very live, but in other cases, a healthy soil has all kinds of organisms in. We've got a little bacteria here, and he is without these soil organisms, life would not exist on land because they recycle nutrients. They form new soil from rock material. They create and maintain the soil structure that's important for us, that allows oxygen and water to penetrate into the soil. And they can also degrade hazardous chemicals, luckily for us, because we humans have a habit of putting bad things in our soil. So just a little list of some of the organisms that we're talking about, everything from earthworms to arthropods, millipedes, centipedes. And we go down a little to the microscopic protozoa, amoebas, and fungi and bacteria. All those work together to create a healthy soil. In fact, a single spadeful of good garden soil contains more species than above ground in the entire Amazon rainforest. So there's a lot going on underground. And you'll find the most bacteria, for example, right next to the root, because as I said, the root is leaking food sources for the bacteria. And so all these little creatures are going to be most numerous right at the root. And we're going to talk a little bit about what they're doing there. You can have up to 10 billion bacteria per gram of soil. And a gram of soil is like just a pinch of soil. And the type of bacteria that you'll see around each plant root can depend upon the plant species, even the variety. And sometimes we can see even just one gene difference between one plant and another will lead to different bacteria around it. So it's all very finely tuned. On the right-hand side here, we have some mycorrhizae, the plant root here, and the mycorrhizae extending into the plant cells and then extending out into the soil where it's absorbing nutrients and transferring that into the plant root. So plants can really have a huge impact on what's going on underground. And they, as I mentioned, they're secreting compounds, and that they can actually select for particular members of the microbial community, depending on what the plant needs. So they send out signals and they send out particular types of chemicals, everything from amino acids, protein building blocks, vitamins, sugar, different kinds of organic acids, and then signaling compounds, telling the bacteria, here there's food, or other kinds of signals. So what these substances are doing, they can recruit the soil microbes that the plant needs, but they can also deter or kill pathogens or insect pests directly or by recruiting other microbes that do that work for them. These microbes can also dissolve the needed minerals for uptake. The mycorrhizae, for example, that we just looked at, and other kinds of bacteria as well. Roots aren't helpless with bacterial or other kind of fungal pathogens that might attack the roots. The roots exudates, in some cases, can directly inhibit the growth of a pathogen, or it can turn on the production of antibiotics by the microbes, those signal compounds that I was talking about. The root can actually signal the bacteria or other fungi to say, release an antibiotic. How cool is that? They can also feed non-pathogens that will then compete with the pathogens. So plants have a lot of influence back and forth. You think about an above ground community and all the complexity of how everything interacts. We have that underground as well. It's just so tiny, we don't think about it. Now, some examples of that is the crown root daisies can excrete a chemical that's lethal to root knot nematodes. So if you've had a problem with root knot nematodes, it's a good idea to plant some of these. The low doses of this chemical that they excrete can attract and kill some of them, whereas if it releases more, it repels and kills all of them. So not something you want to be around if you're a root knot nematode. For that reason, it can be used to protect tomatoes by interplanting this plant with the tomatoes. We don't see a lot of root knot nematodes on tomatoes. Tend to see that more in the southern states, but I wouldn't rule it out in South Dakota. Pea root exudates can kill nematodes. Cabbage that's gnawed on by cabbage root flies releases a chemical that attracts predatory beetles. So not just the microbes here. Cabbage releases that chemical that attracts the predatory beetles. Maybe it thinks it's prey. It smells like prey or something. I'm not sure how that works, but isn't that cool? When we're talking back to the bacteria again, and here's a picture of a root with some bacteria on its surface. Some plants can secrete substances that inhibit the bacteria that convert ammonium to nitrate. So two different kinds of nitrogen source there, and some plants prefer ammonium to nitrate, and those are probably the ones that are trying to inhibit this bacteria. They can also attract or support bacteria that release phosphorus from soil or organic matter. So not just mycorrhizae can do that, but also different kinds of bacteria. And then some bacteria won't attack a plant, pathogenic bacteria won't attack until there's what they call a quorum. They have to have enough of them before they decide to attack the plant root. And they send out these chemicals into the soil, and when that chemical reaches a certain strength, then they go ahead and attack. With plants, cut onto this, and they produce compounds that mess up that signaling so that the bacteria never attack. I think that's pretty cool. So, stepping back a second, then in terms of all that's going on underground, and we're just starting to understand just the smallest pieces of that. What can we do to kind of support this in our very artificial ecosystems of gardens, because we're bringing in plants from all over the world that haven't evolved with the organisms around here. But one of the things we can do is rotate crops or interplant so that we're diversifying the nutrient sources for all those different kinds of bacteria and other organisms in the soil. And what that does is increases the diversity of microorganisms. That leads to increased organic matter in the soil, decreased disease, and can help improve the soil tilth, how easy the soil is to work with. Other influences we have is what kinds, well, that was interesting. Whoa. What kinds of fertilizer we use, whether we're adding organic matter, the plant diversity we just talked about. Tillage is a big one. The more we can avoid tillage, the better it is going to be for our gardens. Sometimes with a new plot, you may have to resort to tillage, but if you can disturb the soil as little as possible, it's going to maintain a lot more, particularly the fungi. Bacteria, it's not as hard on, but with fungi, you break up those fungal structures when you're tilling, and it has to start over. And then, of course, whether or not we use pesticides, particularly herbicides that are going to sink down into the soil, but fungicides can run off and sink into the soil as well. So let's go back to the organic matter here and what that does. And if you've listened to our show at all, or if you're a master gardener, you know that organic matter physically improves the soil's ability to retain water and air and nutrients and helps provide that soil structure. It improves the environment for many beneficial microorganisms, and it does that by providing a diverse food source for them. And if you use cover crops, you're providing habitat and food during non-cropping times. So if you've got some bare soil, you've already taken the crop out, and don't plan to put anything else in for the rest of that year, plant some cover crop into it, and that gives food for fungi, for bacteria, for all these other creatures that are helping us with the soil. I want to sort of sum it up by saying a couple quotes from, this is 580 BC. All things come from earth, and all things end by becoming earth, including us. And there can be no life without soil, and no soil without life. They have evolved together. And finally, a true gardener nurtures the soil, not just the flowers. I want to thank everybody who's listened over the years, all the master gardeners that I've worked with. You've been a wonderful group of people to work with. I've had a wonderful job just getting to know so many very good gardeners that I've learned from, so many people that have helped each other, have helped the state. And we have a progression here of when I first started, the South Dakota Cooperative Extension Service was our logo there. We went through iGrow and SDSU Extension. So you can date yourself by which of these you recognize. And then finally, our current logo of SDSU Extension. It's been 24 years that I've worked with SDSU, and just some photos from over the years. And you may recognize or not John Ball here, Mel Glover next to him. This was out in Rapid City. A few other folks up in the upper left, Hot Springs Master Gardeners from a number of years ago. And then it's some of our early grape growers. This is out in Hot Springs area, one of our early vineyards. And the grape growers, Muriel and Greg Stack, who supplied Prairie Berry with their berries, and Dr. Ann Fennell, our grape expert, who is still on campus. And then up in the upper right, another hat that I've worn was working with the specialty producers. And working with the specialty producers in South Dakota has been very exciting to see, coming from, for example, almost no farmers markets in the state to over 20, seeing the growth of local foods in the state. And I encourage you to support them. If you're one of the growers, thank you. I know you work harder than probably anybody else in the state in producing food for the rest of us. And I just wanted to show you, I started in 2001. So you can see it's not all due to me, because we had a big growth in vegetables in 2002. And that was mostly things like the melons at Forestburg. And then soybeans came in, and ethanol, and we saw a decrease in vegetables for a number of years in terms of production. And then recently it's really taken off. Some of that was COVID, but some of that was before COVID too. It's been trending up for a while. We see the number of farms going up. So we have more vegetable farms than fruits, but we do have some fruits as well. They've been steadily growing. A fair amount of that was grape production, but also things like rainier berries and what was I going to say? June berries, some, and some of our apples, some of our other fruits as well. So we've got combined over $9 million And that's almost all very small farms, family owned. So South Dakota can be proud, and I'm hoping this trend continues. So give each other your support. And thank you for all that you have done over the years. With that, I will.
Rhoda, thank you very much. We really appreciate your sharing your wealth of knowledge, as I mentioned, and just also your mentorship within Extension, because you have just been a great Extension leader that we can all look up to as well. And I love soil. I think one of the things that kind of steered me on the path was finding out about soil. I think I went to a soil conference that was called Living Soil, a Universe
Yeah.
Underfoot at the Gustavus Adolphus College, and that was really, really eye-opening. And it's just, it's hard to comprehend all of the different interactions and complexities of the things that are happening. So it's truly like universe. So thank you for sharing that as well.
You're welcome. It's really fun watching what we're learning now that we have tools that we never had 20 years ago. So
yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to end with a few kind of fun slides about some native plants out West River, because we were just out there a week or so ago. Get this pulled up here. All right. So I was fortunate for the first week of June to be able to go out to the American Public Gardens Association conference in Denver. But I did have kind of a stopover in the Black Hills because my parents live out there. And so I had a chance to look at all of the fun and exciting native plants that were blooming. And amazingly enough, most of these we found in their yard or right next to their property. So it's always fun for a person who's grown native plants in a greenhouse to actually go see them in the wild. And it was extra fun that they were just all there in my parents' backyard. So anyway, this first slide is a downy painted cup, or the Castilleja sessiliflora. This is kind of unique, but it's a hemiparasite, so it actually kind of needs an association with some grasses and things like that to really thrive, which I think is kind of cool. When I came back from the conference, which I will talk about the conference and the presentation that my colleague Catherine and I did probably another day, because that could use a little bit more time. But when we came back from the conference, I also joined up with the Native Plant Initiative folks in Spearfish for the native plant sale, and that was pretty fun. It was a beautiful day. There was lots of fun native plants that they were offering to the public, and also a whole native plant expo. So quite a few of the grad students gave talks as well about seed collection and the regulations and the locations that seed collection is allowed on public land, dormancy and kind of breaking dormancy for germination of native plants for birds, and some other topics as well. So anyway, there's been a couple other native plant sales. However, the final one upcoming is going to be at the Garden Expo at McCrory Gardens on August 2nd that Sydney mentioned in her talk. But we're always looking for new venues for next year. So if you've got some ideas or think you have a location where people are really interested in native plants, definitely let either me or Dr. Laura Perkins know. So anyway, while I was out in the hills visiting, I found quite a few really cool spring ephemerals blooming. Here's just a little sampling of what I found. So the one on the left there is Onethera cephratescens, or scarlet guara. Now this is in the same family as the evening primrose, but these flowers are completely different. They're just so like tropical looking almost. And I've seen this plant a few times out kind of doing some range sampling, and this was just kind of in my parents' backyard. And I just love the cool kind of pink flowers and the just the shape and form of it. And then I also spotted a star lily in their backyard. So Lucrinum montanum, that's another kind of spring ephemeral. And then growing all over the place was also the Pediomelum esculentum, so Teamsala or prairie turnip, which is, an extremely important cultural indigenous plant. So it was really great to see those plants kind of just thriving. A few other ones that I saw were Penstemon albitus, the whitebeard tongue, Iris missouriensis, or the Rocky Mountain iris, and the Lithospermum incisum, or fringed puccoon. And so these plants, a lot of times when you're kind of just surveying a landscape, they don't necessarily stick out as much as some of our showier plants. But if you're walking around and if you take a good look at these plants, they are just stunning. I think, this penstemon on the left, it was only probably 6 to 10 inches tall. But if you get down there and get a good look at it, I mean, the flowers are just so unique. Same with the iris, and so many of these plants. So they might not be our most conspicuous plants, compared to some of these other ornamentals, but they just really have a unique and very endearing qualities of their own. Here's a couple other ones in the yard. So this one on the left looks a little similar. I mean, in these pictures, it's pretty easy to tell the difference, but the one on the left is a death camas, deadly. You do not want to eat this plant. Whereas the one on the right is Allium textile, or a textile onion. It's edible. It's a little bit strong, but it is in the allium family. So, I mean, the flowers are slightly different, but the stem and the leaves are very similar. So you definitely do not want to get these two plants confused. I think the allium's flowers are more kind of umbrals or globes, whereas the death camas seems like it's kind of more in that plume or kind of cone shape. And the allium, of course, does have an oniony scent to it if you crush the leaves. So that's one thing to be on the lookout for. But both of these were blooming quite a lot. There was a lot more of the death camas than the onion, though. So something to be aware of. A couple other plants, as we were just kind of going along, some areas outside of my parents' property. Starry false Solomon seal is on the left, Mayanthemum stellatum, and that was in a little bit more of a woody area, but just not very far away. Right in the middle of the kind of the dirt road was this Penstemon angustifolius, the broadbeard beard tongue, and it just was a vibrant purple blue color that just kind of stood out. And there was a little patch of it on the side of the road too, but I just had to, I'm always stopping and taking pictures of everything. It's almost impossible for anybody to walk along with me because I'm always looking at the ground and trying to snap pictures of plants, but it's a better hobby than others, I'm sure. A few other plants along our way. This one on the left here is a Delphinium nuttialianum, a two-lobe larkspur, or there's quite a few different larkspur varieties. This plant is also toxic, but it is very gorgeous. It was in a meadow, kind of in a little bit of a woodland edge, and there were just a whole kind of meadow full of them, and that was really cool to see. One of my favorites that we sell at the Native Plant Initiative, and I like to use it in landscaping projects as well, is Geum triflorum, or prairie smoke. Now, in the wild, in the woods, it doesn't necessarily grow as big, and that's one thing I do always mention to people is if you see a plant out in the landscape in the prairie and you bring it back, you do have to kind of be considerate of the fact that in richer soil, they might have different growth forms. They might get a lot bigger. They might get taller and floppier. So that's why you want to kind of recreate the conditions as much as realistically possible of out in the wild if you want that same kind of look. Otherwise, it can be a bit of a surprise when they grow 6 feet tall instead of the 2 feet that you saw out in the prairie. This one on the right is just another fun one, prairie bluebells, the Mertensia lanceolata. And then I don't have pictures of all of these, but I do like to kind of take note of plant communities as I see them. So we were on a little walk to Onyx Cave down by Pringle, and these are just a list of some of the plants that I saw. So verbena, a couple different sages, the prairie turnip, yarrow, wild bergamot, wild strawberry, the field pussy toes, and then a couple of the shrubs, smooth rose and the western snowberry. And so when I'm thinking about how to kind of bring these plants into landscapes where people can enjoy them on a broader scale, I do like to take note of the plants that are growing together and the type of habitat and the type of soil that they're growing in. Because one thing to keep in mind is a lot of these plants aren't going to thrive if they are brought into a different sort of environment than what they're used to. Right plant, right place is kind of what we talk about in the native plant landscaping world. So if you've got a site and you go out and you kind of look at some of the different plants that are growing out in the prairie or wild areas that is similar to your site, then kind of take note of those and then see which ones would work best in your landscape. So kind of looking at this, if you wanted if you wanted a shrub, you could do something with the smooth rose. And then I have a picture here of some of the plants that I actually put together in a little landscape plan of the fringe sage, scarlet globe mallow, field pussy toes, and the white penstemon, and then an echinacea I kind of added in at the end there. As plants that would kind of like work well together, they have that kind of like whitish silvery tinge to a lot of the leaves, but I do like the contrast of the purple and the orange of the scarlet globe mallow as well. So just kind of some ideas of how you might, if you're interested in such a thing, kind of putting what you see out in the landscape and how to recreate that back in your own yard. This is just a fun picture. This picture on the left is a ground plum milk vetch that my parents bought at the native plant sale last year. And so this year, I mean, in just 1 year, this plant is just taking off and thriving where they have it planted in their little rock garden. And it had tons of ground plums on it, and we all tried them. And it was it was fun. They actually tasted like a really large pea. So I could eat more of those. It's kind of a tasty vegetable. And then this is just an example of the rock garden that they have out in their yard. You know, in the background, in the grass, you can actually see a bunch of fringe sage, but then they have transplanted a few plants from elsewhere in their property to this little rock garden area. So you can do all kinds of fun things with these different plants. A few resources for plants in the Black Hills area. Wildflowers, grasses, and other plants is a good one. Of course, the Plants of the Black Hills and Bear Lodge Mountains is also good for doing plant ID. And then also this Wildflowers of the Black Hills by Connie McKinney, who is a local author who took all of the pictures for that book. So good resources. It's fun to go out and find plants, but make sure that you can ID them as well. Plant apps are good, but you know, some of these books that actually describe, you know, the stems and the leaves and things are also really great resources. And I just want to switch gears just slightly. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the future, but I've been working with an organization in Sioux Falls, the Food Security Action Network, and they are launching a new website and partnering with Bread Break. So if you are a gardener in the Sioux Falls area and have extra produce, whether it's just a backyard garden or a market garden, this organization is really kind of back on the local food topic, working to rescue and glean some of the produce that would otherwise potentially be going to waste. And so if you're interested in that, Food Rescue 605 is the website, and they've got a sign-up form if you're interested in donating or helping. And then Bread Break is another organization that kind of rescues food from businesses, but also partners with different producers as well to utilize all of that extra produce. So I just kind of wanted to put a plug in this talk for those organizations if you're in the Sioux Falls area, and we'll hopefully be spreading the word about those a little bit more in the future. And I just wanted to also say to Rhoda, it's kind of cool that you wore your Garden Line shirt today, because I just wanted to say, from Garden Line to Garden Hour and everything in between, we just want to thank you so much again for all of your insight and wisdom. And I just kind of put a few of the things you worked on, you know, so much, you know, with the fruit and vegetable production, with the high tunnels, you know, all the produce safety training, the How to Grow It series, which is awesome, the vegetable gardening in South Dakota, and so much more. So I actually just wanted to ask you a question. Out of all of these things that you've worked on, do you have a few different kind of like favorites that just kind of stick with you?
Boy, that's a tough one, because I've done so many different things with so many people, and And one thing that's been constant throughout, though, is people that are willing to share information with each other, all the producers, and of course, master gardeners. And then I've had really wonderful colleagues, you included, and Sydney included. And so it's, if you're thinking about, if there's any young people that are listening and you're thinking about going into horticulture, you can make a wonderful living out of it, and make a really good career. So I just feel fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. And I can actually attest to the fact you can even switch careers and go into horticulture if you want to later in life, like I did. If you realize you just can't keep going on at a job without being around more plants. So,
well, I had a couple years as a winter wheat breeder technician. So I dipped my feet into the agronomy side and went back to horticulture.
yeah, well, we're glad that you did. So I don't think we have any other questions, except there is one question about planting a scarlet maple between a sidewalk and a boulevard that's only about 10 feet, and wondering if that's enough room for the roots. And so my feeling is, usually root systems are, about needing the same space as the canopy. So I don't know if that would be enough space. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say the same.
Species.
10 feet between the sidewalk and the boulevard, is that enough room for a scarlet maple?
I would say the same thing with the canopy. It might not be enough.
I mean, it might go under the roots might go under the sidewalk and into the front yard potentially, but I think, worried about the curb and whether the roots are going to interfere with the curb is kind of the question. So
we do see trees in cities that are in specialized containers, but they take a lot more care.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the tree might survive, but it might not be the best conditions for the tree. Yeah, whenever I pass by a sidewalk where there's just a tree growing with about 4 inches of space and then sidewalk all around it, I just feel kind of bad for it.
I look at those and wonder how.
Yep. So, all right. Well, let me just check and see if there's any final questions. Nope. I think, back to Sydney's response, the strawberries, it looks like the one that's doing the best right now was Seascape, but TBD, because that might change over the course of the season. So we'll wait to hear back on the report for that.
And that'll be interesting to see how it survives the winter in different locations too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap for Garden Hour tonight. We'll see. Maybe some of you around the state are getting a little bit of rain. I was hoping that we might get a little bit of rain here in Brookings, but it seems like I'm probably going to have to go outside and do some watering now. So that's what's next on my agenda. But all right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again here throughout Garden Hour for the rest of the season. And Rhoda, feel free to join in as a guest anytime that you want and ask us questions.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.